Pacer Nation, happy Friday to you. It is game 3 tonight in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The Indiana Pacers look to get a win in this series against the New York Knicks. And here to preview this game with me and Facci is nobody. We have no guest today. Had to reschedule our guest, but hey, me and Facci are here to talk about this, all the things that have led up the last couple of hours here as we've recapped the game. There's been a lot that's happened on Thursday during the day, but Facci, how are you doing, man? Excited for game 3?
I am. I needed that post game two sleep, to try and wake up and be like, all right, you know what? Things have not gone our way, but I'm not in the blame game. I think at this point the Pacers just need to play better, and I feel confident they will play better in game 3. I can't say they're going to turn this whole series around, but it starts with game 3, and I feel good about it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing. There's a lot of things to talk about here, but before we jump into everything that's going to happen for game 3, I just want to go back to what happened last night. We didn't really get a touch on it too much. Briefly talked about Rick Carlisle and his comments, and it's been a very big talking point all day long. You're in New York, you're getting it from New York people. I'm in
Everybody.
Indiana, I'm getting it from all the Pacer fans, and we got some people that really believe the conspiracy theory that the referees want to make sure the Pacers don't win any of these games, and they're the reasons why they won't watch pro basketball. I mean, I'm hearing those takes at work. So I'm just kind of curious, everything you've been hearing today, your thoughts on the whole Rick Carlisle thing.
First of all, I think when we recorded last night, I think you might have mentioned like, oh yeah, Carl said something about like 29 foul calls, and then all of a sudden that number jumped from like 29 to what? It was 78.
Yeah, there was 49 from game 2 that they submitted today.
Yeah, so that number has jumped drastically. All day, I've just been heckled by living in the New York area. I have a lot of friends that are Knicks fans, and then even people that maybe I even went to high school with over 10 years ago, popping out of the woodworks, just being like, really, you guys just gonna complain about everything? This is the softest thing I've ever heard. This, and that. And I'm not gonna defend it. Look, game 1 had some sketchy calls. I think the officiating has been bad on both sides, but I don't think it makes the Pacers look great. Complaining about 78 calls, I think that's a lot. I think that we do probably look like crybabies right now. I don't think there's a conspiracy out there. I just think that that there's been some bad calls in this series, but you have to play better. And I think that right now, for Carlisle, it's tough because I don't want this to kind of seep into the players and their belief to say like, oh, we're being screwed out of here. Like, no, they need to just kind of shake this off and get to work. But on a day like today, I mean, yeah, that was all people could talk about was the Pacers' grievance over these calls.
Yeah, I will say this. I think that since there was only one game last night for the NBA, and there's not really I mean, there's NHL going on right now, but not a whole lot else.
Okay.
Like, Major League Baseball still early May. Nobody cares about that till October, really. So, unless you're a guy named Ethan Harrison who will skip a Pacers playoff game for a Milwaukee Brewers New York Yankees game in April, like, what are we doing?
Crazy.
Game 3, game winner for Tyrese. You missed that for some Yankees spring baseball and they lost. So anyway, take your losses there. But anyway, back to the real stuff here. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it overshadowed everything, and
It did.
it didn't even really allow the national media to talk about how good the Knicks played in the second
Mhm.
half, and the Pacers really didn't get to call it out for how bad they were. Basically, everything you heard today was, yeah, Rick Carlisle was complaining, and Rick Carlisle should have played T.J. McConnell in the fourth quarter. That was pretty much the entire storyline that I've heard from everybody. And you've got Bucks fans chiming in on Twitter now too, making jokes about things about the Pacers being crybabies and frauds, and oh, they should have played McConnell. Like that's maybe the thing that they should have complained about to the league too. And it's like,
A
like
lot of
I
that.
don't really care. Everybody's got their hot takes, but saying that Carlisle should have played McConnell, that's not a hot take. That's a cold take. Everybody's saying it.
There's the facts to back it up, and I think that we could either get into that right now or we could save it for a little bit. But
Yeah.
I do think that's something that should happen more in Game 3. But as it relates to the timeout stuff like that, look, I couldn't be the guy that's gonna hop up on the table and be like, "Are you kidding me? Well, look at this. We have all these fouls to back it up. The show goes on." And then I know that Rick said you got to give small market teams a chance, and then everybody pointed out how the Timberwolves and the Thunder have had a lot of success, in this playoffs. And you can make an argument to say the Thunder played the Pelicans without Zion in round 1. Okay, that's definitely worth something. But at the same point, I think the Timberwolves are just playing great basketball right now, and different situation. But yeah, it stinks. I'm just moved on from the blame game, and I'm just looking at this team right now, and I think that there's a ton of ways that they've been outplayed, and I don't want the fouls to continue to be the story because I think the rest of the league is kind of looking around, probably laughing at us right now, being like, "Oh, the Pacers, they're just gonna point the finger everywhere else." But you know what? To back it up, here's a couple stats that I actually found. During the regular season, the Indiana Pacers were whistled for the most fouls in the NBA. I don't think this is popping out of nowhere. They had 1,756 fouls. So this is a team that's struggled with foul calls or been in foul trouble, all year. The Knicks had the sixth fewest fouls in the NBA, 1,447 total fouls. It's about 3.6 less fouls per game than the Pacers. I think that we got to admit the Pacers have had a problem committing too many fouls all year. I think the big thing that you could say if you want to really zone in on it is more of the timing of these fouls, I think is what, we have a bit of a gripe with.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw this on Twitter too from Big Luca. They said the New York Knicks, one of the most physical teams in the NBA, have played 8 playoff games. Of those 8 games, they have been called for fewer fouls than their opponent in 7 of them. That one game, an 11-point loss in Philadelphia. So the Knicks have been getting a nice whistle,
Yes.
and it is just part of the story. Brian Windhorst was on Pat McAfee's show today, and he
All
basically
that.
said that he backs officials all the time. He said, and
It's
he said 99% of the time I back them up, but this 1% was game one. And I think that the whole Rick Carlisle thing coming out in game two was more so about game one than it was game two.
I
We
agree with
talked
that.
about game two, and it took us a while to get into the officiating because we both felt like it was one of those things where the Pacers didn't lose game two because of the officiating. Now, I think that what the Pacers are trying to do by submitting these calls is to try to set the tone for games three and games four and how they want the game to be officiated, because now they know that the league is going to be looked at differently, especially their officials. So, yeah, he's probably going to have a hefty fine for it, but that's just the nature of the business. And it's one of those ones you take on the chin because you're trying to defend your team. But, you said you don't want it to become this mentality of the Pacers like, oh, we're getting screwed by the referees. I like the way that their two leaders, Tyrese Halliburton and TJ McConnell, answer those questions in the press conference, basically acknowledging like, hey, we respect Rick. He's been a great coach and all that stuff, but it's got to be on us, not the officiating. And there's 2 reasons why they're doing that. One, they don't want to get fined. They let their coach handle that for them. And two, it is bigger than the officiating. I mean, the Pacers could have won both games if they maybe just played, you know, 75-80% better on defense. So it's not just the officiating and everything like that, but it's definitely it's a combination of that plus the Pacers lackluster play and urgency in those big moments.
You got to look in the mirror. The Knicks have showed more heart. They've wanted it more in the fourth quarter. They've tightened up after the first half. Both times the Knicks have just looked like better teams in the second half. In specific, game one, the Knicks looked like a way better team in the fourth quarter. In game two, the Knicks looked like a way better team in the third quarter.
Yeah.
I just felt like those performances were just season changing performances or series changing, I would say, by the Knicks. But also, as a leader for Carlisle, you have to set the tone for your team. Look,
Yep.
it's going to sound comical. I'm not a head coach in the NBA. I manage a sales team. But I can tell you when things are bad, if I'm the negative one for my team, everybody becomes negative on the team. I have to always pitch that glass half full approach for my team. Otherwise, people are going to get bitter. They're going to start blaming everything else. And the team's just not going to respond the way you want it to. With the Pacers, I think you need Carlisle to just simply say, we need to be better. We need to get those 50-50 balls. We need to show the heart. We need to make free throws. We need to just, get those timely stops. The Pacers aren't getting timely stops. They're not getting 50-50 balls. They're not making free throws. And I just feel like right now, I mean, that stuff, it adds up. The Knicks, they're thriving off of those second chance points and the crowd. And there's plenty of things that go into why the Knicks have won outside of the officiating.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. And I think that part of the problem is the Pacers just have to be better. And
Yeah.
the main thing is, to me, defense. You can't give up 130 points and 121 points respectively and expect to win these games. You're allowing New York to play your pace, and they're doing it better than you are, and that's a
They are.
problem. And that's where I think Rick Carlisle is kind of going at the officiating just because of the inconsistency of allowing New York to be more physical than Indiana. But that is besides the point. But you talked about it last night. You felt good about game three. We
Do.
questioned, would OG Anunoby be able to play? And if you heard the opening clip of this podcast, you heard Adrian Wojnarowski kind of giving us a report on what's going on with OG Anunoby. And OG is out for game three. And it seems like he is not probably going to be able to play in game four, not been ruled out for game four yet. But the Knicks could be without him for game four. And you got to remember, they already lost Julius Randle, in the middle of the season. Bogdanovich went out last playoff round. Mitchell Robinson, he's out pretty much for the next 6 to 8 weeks. So they're down 4 of their rotation guys now. And losing OG Anunoby, a guy that was terrific in game two, is only going to make New York thinner. And with them being on the road, Jalen Brunson's still questionable. This is a great opportunity for Indiana to even this series up, in games 3 and games 4, and try to make this more of a series. And I think that is obviously a big talking point, but also a reason why I think Rick Carlisle was even more adamant about making sure that the officials are aware of how they feel about how they're getting called.
This is everything for Indiana. I mean, look, you talked about the guys that are out for the Knicks. That's kind of almost a starting lineup. I mean, it really is. A lot of those guys could and do start for the New York Knicks. But you talked about how good OG was. I mean, he had one of his best playoff games. He had his best playoff half of his career. He
Yeah.
scored, I think it was 22 points in the first half. So he was on pace for just an absolute fantastic game. But when you look into OG, just to break it down of just how important of a loss this is, or how big of a loss this is for the Knicks, he's not only one of the better two-way players in this league, but he's also been guarding Siakam, and he knows Siakam's game. They're former teammates. But to break it down, how good are the Knicks with OG? Well, in the regular season, they were 20-3 with OG. If you factor in the playoffs, they're 26-5.
Yeah.
This is a really good team with OG Anunoby, and they are not the same team when he is not on the floor. So he's a big difference maker. But now who's going to fill in? Well, Precious Achiuwa is going to have to fill into that starting lineup. He played 28 minutes last game, so I imagine he goes into that starting lineup. Now the Knicks are left with just 2 players that are actively going to play for them that are above the height of 6'4". That's Isaiah Hartenstein and Precious Achiuwa. That could be a problem for them, having just real 2 players with big size. The Knicks are going to be playing a lot smaller, and we'll see if the Pacers can respond, or if that's something where the Knicks are even able to play a little bit faster.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see if they do that. I mean, I expect everybody to continue to play around 45 plus minutes for Tom Thibodeau. And I know a lot of people were kind of saying, this is what happens when you play for Tom Thibodeau. You're expected to play a lot of minutes, and that's why you get injuries like this. And OG Anunoby is a guy that has been injury prone throughout his entire career. And I think that is what makes trading for him such a high risk, because you talk about it, like the numbers, what is it, 26-5?
26-5 with OG this year. That
Yeah,
is
and they're 30-29 without him. So
Yikes.
they're a 500 team without him, and they're insane with him, right? Now, opponent, I'm sure that the opponent that they played probably does matter for those stats, but still, I think it's a large enough sample size to realize like OG Anunoby is that much of a difference maker for that team, because anytime you can get a defensive power forward, small forward guy that can guard 1-4, 1-5, that can change a game. So you're right. Precious Achiuwa, though, has had his number, has had Pascal Siakam's number this season so far for the Knicks when they played against each other. I mean, I know that Achiuwa did not play a lot in game 1, but in game 2, he was getting offensive rebounds over Pascal Siakam. And I remember in the regular season game, Precious Achiuwa just like ate up the Pacers. So it's one of those things where, yeah, like you can say it's a blessing for the Pacers that the injury bug has been so kind to them with all these teams dealing with injuries, whether it's Giannis and Dame, or now it's OG, Julius Randle, Bogdanovich, Mitchell Robinson. Like, they have got lucky to play teams that have been battling injuries, but at the same time, you cannot take anything for granted. And we saw that happen when they got torched by the Bucks in game 5, who basically had Chris Middleton and the others with them. Bobby Portis, Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley. It's like those guys went off. So regardless, I'm just going to say this: Indiana has to come in prepared, and they have to play like it's game 7 the next 2 games. It's not do or die, but it is do or die, and I'm
It
not
is.
trying to be over the top dramatic with saying that, but they have to win those 2 games, protect home court, and really showcase that this is a team that is to be taken seriously and not a team that just got lucky in round 1 and fell apart in round 2.
Look, we knew at some point this had to end this season, but I ain't ready for it to be over just yet.
Yeah.
I feel that there's going to be electricity in the building for game 3 because this rivalry is renewed. Pacers Knicks haven't been, in the playoffs against each other in Indiana in quite some time. 2013. It's been a while. So I think that the crowd will respond. I'm glad it's not a 5:30 p.m. game like when the last time they played on a Friday. So that helps. But I just think that we need the crowd. We need the crowd to punch back, and I think that the Pacers players will punch back. But yeah, you need to smell blood in the water with no OG out there, and you need to get after it and get it. And I think that Pascal Siakam is someone that needs to step up. I mean, you shared his numbers earlier
Yeah.
over his last 6 games. When you take out those first 2 amazing games where he averaged about 36.5 points against the Bucks, he has not been the same player at all. And he needs to be the guy that we know he can be, more like the guy that we saw in game 6, the closeout game against Milwaukee. He's got to take advantage of those matchups. So I think that that's what I have my eyes on of could he thrive without OG on there? And I was looking to see what he would do in that fourth quarter, against the Knicks last game, game 2, and I was let down. I was. So
Yeah.
I hope that he will respond in this matchup.
Yeah, he looked tired, and I think I brought it up last episode. If I didn't, I brought it up somewhere else when I've talked today. But I just felt like in that fourth quarter, you saw that he was kind of exhausted, and he had played the beginning of the fourth quarter all the way through the end of it. So just a bit of a bummer for him. But he's got to be a better and more efficient shooter because Facci, 36.8% from the free throw line and 13% from three over the last 6 playoff games is inexcusable. He needs to find himself in spots where he can actually make these shots and not be putting himself in the offense where he's getting these threes open that he's not accustomed to making. He is a much better corner 3-point shooter than he is on the wing or at the top of the key. He might knock one of those down, here and there, but that's not his bread and butter. His bread and butter is the corner or in the post or the mid range. And he needs to find himself in areas where he can be more effective. And I know that I probably have said this, 3 or 4 different times on the last couple of podcasts that we've done, but it's just infuriating because you need him to be that guy that he was in Milwaukee, around 30 points a game, especially when you have a mismatch like this because they don't have anybody that can really guard him. And if you want to put someone smaller on him, he should be able to shoot right over him like he did in that Bucks series. So to me, he's got to be impactful and he's got to really bring it and remind everybody why the Pacers traded 3 first-round picks for him.
Yep.
He's not a slump, he's not just a guy that's a part of a team. He is a guy that is a difference maker, all NBA level player, all-star potential candidate. He's got to show up and be that. He can't let Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo and all these other guys make him look like he doesn't belong in that same category. He needs to join them and say, you know what, you guys are that for the Knicks. Well, I'm this for the Pacers. And Tyrese, you can drop 30 some points, but I'm going to be right there with you. They've got to play great together for Indiana to win this series.
Max players got to do max things. And I think that when you go into this offseason, Pascal Siakam is going to be expecting a max contract. Well, I mean, look, how are you going to respond in the playoffs? I think that that's going to be something that's big. 14 points last game, not going to cut it. Game 1, 19. You're already looking across the board. Obi Toppin scored more points than you, 20 points, in this last game too. Turner had more in game 1. Halliburton had more in this game. It's like, and then you look on the other side, just like you mentioned, Brunson, DiVincenzo, Josh Hart. Those guys have all been better. OG. So, I mean, where is Pascal Siakam as it relates to, scoring in this series? Not high enough. He's averaging about 16.5 points per game through 2 games. That's not going to cut it right now. That would put him at probably, 4th or 5th, amongst all players in this series. That's not going to do the job. But the duo of Siakam and Turner, look, if you have OG out, those two, they need to take it personally and really step up on the glass. I talked about how New York's going to be smaller, when you have OG out of there. Josh Hart through 2 games is averaging more rebounds than Siakam and Turner combined. That can't happen. This man is 6 foot
Pathetic.
four, and I get it. He rebounds well past his size. He is a really good rebounder. This is not a fluke. But what we're seeing from, Turner having 2 rebounds in game one, that can't happen. And he's got 7 in game two. Okay, that's better. You could definitely admit that. But those two, I mean, you just want to see them set the tone offensively. If they could both be around double-digit rebounds, I think that that's going to be huge. But that's kind of what the Pacers need, because this is a team that was just out rebounded by 10 rebounds. In the fourth quarter, they have crumbled as it relates to offensive rebounds, that I think that they need to be able to set that tone on the glass, especially late in the game, to be able to keep the Knicks off the offensive glass and those second chance points.
Yeah, I think rebounding is a skill. Like, there's guys you watch in the league and they just have a nose for the basketball
Definitely.
and they do it, but there is a
Effort's got to be there
percentage
too.
there's a percentage of it that is just straight out hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Josh Hart really just is all in, because he knows how to hustle, and he doesn't, and he's a relentless worker on the glass. And I feel like sometimes Turner and Siakam are a little bit nonchalant when it comes to being aggressive on the glass. It's like when we've seen Obi Toppin out there at times in this series so far, it's like he has like an effort level that's a little bit higher to just rise above everybody, grab the rebound. Same with Isaiah Jackson. And
Yes.
I just want to see the same effort from the Pacers to starting big men. You've got to make sure that you keep Josh Hart off the boards. And I was asked this question earlier today on a radio interview. They're like, how do you keep Josh Hart from being so impactful? And I said, look, it's not an easy task, but here's what I'll tell you. You've got to make sure you know where he's at on the court every single second he's out there, which is the entirety of the game. You can't have mental lapses where you just kind of watch a shot go up and turn your back and go to box out, because the moment you do that is the moment he's going to soar in untouched, crashing the glass, and then he's going to go for two, get you in foul trouble, or get the rebound and kick it out to somebody else for three. And the Pacers will be caught in scramble mode, and it won't work out. So, there's gonna be lapses in the game, things like that. But Indiana has to make sure, okay, no matter what, we've got to put a body on Josh Hart and knock him to the ground. Even if you have to get a foul for it by putting a body on him, take that risk instead of giving him a free lane to the basket to grab an offensive rebound, grab a defensive rebound, and then have his own fast break, or have his own putback and make the Pacers pay because they can't get a rebound.
Well, I just think of when Josh Hart missed that free throw in game one and was able to get his own rebound and lay it in. That just can't happen.
Lane violation, right?
Yes, and not called, of course, but look, it's just that can't happen. And he had clutch offensive rebounds against the Sixers, and I believe that's when they had that crazy scramble, and I think it was game two where they kind of stole that one from Philly. Josh Hart had a really big offensive rebound where just people just didn't have eyes on him, and he soared in and got the job done. And I just think that his effort, it's crazy that he still has energy left in the tank in minutes 47 and 48 that he's logging. Like, I am 110% convinced this man will not even play. He won't play 47 minutes. He'll play the full 48 moving forward.
Oh yeah.
He had 15 rebounds. He's moving the ball. He's been just about their best assist guy as well. So that just, you can't have Josh Hart averaging about a triple double at this point. So I think
Yeah.
that, like I've said before, some Knicks players should come down a little bit to reality. Dante DiVincenzo has been playing like an all-star in this series. Josh Hart is playing, it feels like almost like an MVP level, but I'd say that, but Brunson's clearly been the MVP type
Yeah.
of guy in this series. And for Brunson, I understand he's going to be banged up, quick turnaround. I fully anticipate him playing. And we've seen even a hobbled Brunson is still a very dangerous man. And that guy, it doesn't matter if you're guarding him or not, he's still going to shoot it. And you got to respect that confidence. I definitely do. And I think that that's why, and we talked a little bit before, TJ McConnell has absolutely guarded Brunson better than what we've seen from Andrew Nembhard. And to go back into some of those numbers, I got them right in front of me. As it relates to TJ McConnell, here's what the numbers are. Evan Sidery tweeted this out earlier, so give him a quick shout out. But with an adjusted net rating per 100 possessions, with TJ McConnell on the floor, Indiana is plus 53.6 points. All right. On the court, they have an offensive rating of 137 and a defensive rating of 115.1. So that's plus 22. When he's
Yeah.
off the court, They have an offensive rating of 110.9 and defensive rating of 142.6. That's minus 31.7. That's putrid. They need what TJ McConnell is doing. And to boil it down even further, Alex, when he came out at the 7-minute and 10-second mark of the fourth quarter, Indiana trailed just by 2.
Right.
They were down 105 to 103. And in those first couple minutes of the fourth quarter, McConnell had 6 points and an assist. He was grooving and obviously did not return to the court. And for that, I think that was one of those big storylines that we addressed earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I just think McConnell's ability to get into the paint and get the shots that he wants in this series has been the difference maker for him and how he's been able to be so impactful. And we've talked about the struggles of a guy like Aaron Nesmith, right? And how he has really not been able to have an impact, heavily in this series, aside from maybe a blockbuster dunk. And it would have probably been a massive steal had he gotten that steal called for
That
him.
is
But
true. That would have
he's
been a
he's
huge
had a few
play.
moments, and I don't want to be dismissive of him, right? But definitely not been as great as you have, or he hasn't played as well as you'd hope he would have played, based on what we saw from him throughout the regular season. Now, it's not an easy task, and I know that there's a lot of things that are at play here. But you talk about Dante DiVincenzo and what he's been able to do, and this is where I want to get into my adjustment conversation, because I totally understand, like, you cannot start McConnell. It's going to disrupt the flow of the offense and things like that. And I understand, Nimhard, to me, like, he's actually played decent defense on Brunson. Brunson just played better offense.
Brunson's incredible right
There,
now. I think right now, out of everybody, and sorry to cut you off, I think right now, out of everybody, at this exact moment, you could probably say that Jalen Brunson may be playing the best basketball in the league right now.
yeah, he's up there for top 3, top 4. I mean, I think Anthony Edwards has been
Yeah.
sensational.
Mhm.
But I haven't watched enough outside of the Pacers series to really dive into who's been great. I mean, Jaden McDaniels also from Minnesota has been pretty awesome. But regardless, Jalen Brunson has been a bucket, and he has been incredibly hard to stop. And so I think that no matter who you put on him, he's gonna get he's gonna get where he wants to get to, and get what he wants. But the one adjustment that I would like to make, and for the starters, I would throw Aaron Nesmith on Jalen Brunson to start the game off with, because I think that Aaron Nesmith is a better on-ball defender than he is an off-ball defender. You saw how many times he got caught ball watching in the wrong spot, getting sucked down too low on defense, that's where DiVincenzo was really able to have his impact. If I'm Indiana, I'm thinking really long and hard about putting Andrew Nimhard on Dante DiVincenzo to try and eliminate him, because I think that there is a way Nimhard can impact a guy like DiVincenzo, who's not going to score in the same ferocity as a Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson
Mhm.
has the smoothness to his game. He's got that step back jumper, that mid range
Yep.
midi, the midi that he has. It's like hitting every part of the rim and still falling in. Like, it doesn't matter. He's able to do that. And DiVincenzo is more of a catch and shoot guy, or he'll try to blow by you and dunk it if he has a head of steam going. So that is the one adjustment I would make. I would continue trying to find a place for Halliburton to stay on Josh Hart, because Josh Hart is not a guy that's going to really do anything off the dribble too much. He's going to be a catch and shoot guy that's going to crash the glass. But Halliburton has got to play better defense on Josh Hart. That's who's going to guard, and really be aggressive on the glass as well, which I think he can be. But with his back bothering him, that's also going to be difficult to play that physical of a game. So if the Pacers do, Facci, want to do more double teaming, I still think that I would trust Halliburton to kind of help Nesmith double team to get the ball to Brunson's hands. But don't let Nimhard lose track of DiVincenzo, because Tyler Smith brought up a great point. He said it feels like every DiVincenzo wide open shot is reminiscent of Kyle Korver in the playoffs against the Pacers. And that's what it's been like. It's just every shot they make it. And it's so you gotta eliminate that. And I think if you can eliminate that from the Knicks offense, it really makes them even more one dimensional.
Yeah, if at this point, if DiVincenzo is even partially open, I just mentally feel that three is going in.
Same.
I do. He's averaging 5.5 made 3-pointers in these first 2 games. A large part of his scoring is coming from the 3-point line. I mean, in game 1, 15 of his 25 was from 3-point line. In game 2, 18 of his 28 was from the 3-point line. So yeah, if Nemhard could be, sticking them a little bit tighter, I think that could be a really good matchup. So yeah, I mean, look, if Nemhard is to hold DiVincenzo to 20. That could be a big difference in this series, in terms of swinging a game. I do think that Nembhard played better offensively in game two. That was definitely evident. And I think that the Pacers overall, like Nesmith, can only go up from here. I would like to believe that. I don't want to be the guy that just cursed him and all of a sudden he's getting even worse. But I think he could only get better and be able to deliver a stronger performance. And I think that the crowd's just going to have everybody juiced up just a little bit more to play a little bit harder, and they'll feed off of that. I mean, everything we heard, you were in the building game three. Everything was all about how the Pacers were like that crowd. I mean, they were chanting, Miles Turner, and all of a sudden he hits a three, and it's just like we need some of that because the Knicks players were using that almost like Gatorade. It was giving them that second wind. So I think that defensively, I think Indiana will be better. And offensively, I think that they played pretty good at times that they have. I mean, scoring wise, it's not like this is a Pacers team that's been stifled by any means. They scored 117 and 121. Pretty good. It's below your regular season average, but you expect that in the playoffs. The problem is just how much more points the Knicks are scoring in the
Yeah.
playoffs. That's the problem. But I do like your adjustment of potentially Nembhard on Dante DiVincenzo.
Yeah, and I think if it's late in the game once again, and I think maybe the Pacers could have gone back to this with like 3.5 minutes left in that fourth quarter. When you see Neesmith struggling as much as he has, that's when you kind of go back to McConnell and allow him to play. And I think if you want to go with Siakam and the bench once again, like they have been, those units have been working really for the most part with Siakam out there with Isaiah and Obi and Shep and McConnell. Like it's been a little bit bigger, but I think it's worked for the stretches they've been out there. I wouldn't be upset if they pulled, Obi a little bit earlier in the fourth and then brought him back in for Siakam to get him a little bit of a rest and kind of see how that's going. Because to me, like I want to ask Rick this, and I know there's going to be a lot of media there for Game Three, so I might not get a chance to ask it. But I am kind of curious, what is he seeing that is allowing McConnell and Obi Toppin when they come into the game to change things up so much and make it that much more difficult for New York to defend? You would think by now that New York would probably have some type of game plan to stop them, but at the same time, the bench has been great in both games, and it hasn't really hurt the Knicks in the long run. So I just kind of wonder, like, what's the difference between like when they bring those two guys in, like how come they're able to completely impact the game and change things so much? And if that's the case and they're able to do that, don't you think that their energy could really be beneficial? Fresh legs coming back in, a few minutes left in the fourth quarter, going up against a more tired New York team.
Fresh legs is exactly what I think. I think when they come in, they're having that full burst of energy, giving you 100%. And I think that they've been very impactful early on. I think that Obi also shooting the 3-point ball really well right now. He's 4 of 7 in this series. He's been, leaking out on fast breaks, getting some good dunks. I think that, I also just think that we touched on it before. His effort has just really been there. So that's been great. But McConnell also, he's putting pressure at the rim. He's driving to the rim, and he is finding either guys that are open in ways that Halliburton isn't. In game one, Halliburton, I felt like he was barely even crossing the 3-point line in terms of his dribble. McConnell has never been afraid to dribble right around that baseline and then, move it back out. But I mean, what he did from a ball movement standpoint, McConnell had, I mean, it might have been like, I think he had like 8 assists by halftime. So he was great. But I definitely think that, I like what you said before about being able to bring them back in, because why couldn't McConnell have, checked out at the 7-minute, 10-second mark and came back in with, 4 or 3 minutes to go or anything of that sort? No, we're not expecting him to finish out a game, over Tyrese Halliburton. I think that that's just something you just don't expect and won't, see. But I do think that everything's got to be on the table right now. I think everything's good. The way that Obi and TJ McConnell have played, you can make an argument that so far in this series, the first 2 games, they have been amongst the best that Indiana's had to offer from a consistency standpoint. And that's something that you can't waste those type of bench performances, because the bench has been so good in games 1 and 2 that it becomes hard to just count on it for the rest of the series. These are the performances you got to capitalize on and say, our bench lifted us to this win.
Yeah, I mean, in the last series, it was the bench lifted them at home,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the starters that kind of carried them on the road. And this series so far, it's been a little bit flipped.
Yep.
We'll see how the starters perform at home, but you bring up a great point with Miles Turner and things like that. So Miles is going to have a much better game. I don't think he's played great in this series so far. Like,
Game 2 was a letdown.
yeah,
Big time.
game
Big
one was
time.
a fine, good game from him, but not a
Yeah.
great game.
No.
I think that if he can continue to showcase what he did in games 3 and games 4 against Milwaukee in this series, like, you're gonna have to make them pay a little bit, especially if they don't have any other option besides playing Hartenstein 40 some minutes a game. Like, you can't let Isaiah Hartenstein play better than you in this series, especially if you're trying to prove that you're better than him, because I think that Hartenstein has really solidified himself as a starting center in this league,
Mhm.
and he's going to get a nice payday in free agency. Somebody's going to pay him, and you can
Definitely.
see why. He was very good out of the short roll as a passer. He's good around the rim, has nice soft touch, and he's a solid defender as well. So, I think Miles, though, when Miles at his best, he looks like a top 5 center, top 6 center in the league. He just doesn't do it consistently enough, and I'm hoping that after having a bad, underwhelming game in game 2, he can bounce back. This I always remember this, and there was a friend of mine who grew up really, invested in the '90s Pacers era, and they talked about Rick Smits and how Rick Smits was a very inconsistent player who could go out there and drop you 25, 30 in any game because of how effective he was offensively, but he wouldn't get the rebounds that you wanted because he's more of a finesse type of player, not a bruiser. And that's why you had the Davis brothers. But then there'd be games where Smits would get in foul trouble and he wouldn't be able to stay on the court, or if he was, he'd have these low scoring games. And they drew the parallel of like him and Turner are very similar in that regard because they're both very skilled offensive players that can do certain things, but then there's also times when they can just be really infuriating in a big moment because they don't always show up. So I'm hoping that Miles just really elevates his game at home, and we get some more Miles Turner chance in the arena because my goodness, that would be electric.
It will be electric and it will happen. But yeah, I mean, let's look at some of these inconsistencies. Turner had that stretch where he was just getting better and better. Game 1 against Milwaukee was tough. 5 of 17 from the field, rough. 22 points. Hey, that was a playoff career high. The next 2 games, 29 points, 29 points, playoff career highs. Awesome. Then just 13 points in the game 5 loss. And then the game 6 win, he was 1 of 6. A lot of people forget that because the Pacers won. He had 5 points in game 1 against the Knicks, 23 points, shot it well from the field. Obviously, we talked about the rebounding, was kind of nowhere to be found on the glass. And then last game, just really 3 of 11. I mean, 6 points. The inconsistency is all over the place that, yeah, it is frustrating to see. But we need a Turner that, like, I don't remember the stat anymore, but I remember when you were sharing the stat of when he does have a double-double. I mean, the Pacers are that much better of a team. And I just feel that so far, in the playoffs, he's yet to crack 10 boards. He's got a couple games at 9, so definitely give him credit. But he also has performances of 5 rebounds, 2 rebounds. The Pacers don't he's what we're looking at to be able to pull down at least 7 to 10 boards. And in the playoffs, you need that. Players are playing bigger than their size. We can't be having, okay, well, Andrew Nemhard's really got to, track down these rebounds. Like that can't be a thing. Turner,
Yeah.
we need you on the glass because New York knows what they're getting out of Hartenstein and Josh Hart.
Hart.
They
Yeah.
know that those guys will, no doubt about it, give them 10 plus rebounds per night, if not more. They're getting that on a consistent basis.
Yeah, you just got to match that level of intensity, and it's the playoffs, man. You got to, put your big boy pants on, and it's, like Derek Schultz said after game 1, it's big boy basketball. And
Mm-hmm.
Tyrese Halliburton, Rick Carlisle talked about. He said everybody knows Tyrese has a bad back, and it kind of seemed like, okay, is this something they haven't really talked about? It's been like, yeah, he had a little back spasms in game 6 that almost kept him out of the game, but he was able to play through it thanks to the trainer. And then after that, it's just kind of been like, no, I'm good, I'm good. But then Carlisle says that after game 2, like everybody knows Tyrese has a bad back, and you see a guy like Josh Hart just 2-hand shove him. Now I don't think it was anything like outlandish where it
Yeah.
was like dirty like WWE style or anything like that, but to me, if I saw my best player get pushed in the back like that, I think that there's part of me that wants one of our role players on the team at that moment to go there and confront Josh Hart and get into a little bit of a scuffle like you would have saw back in the '90s heyday. And I was telling someone today, I said, I don't want to injure anybody, but man, it'd be nice to send someone like James Johnson in there, someone you're not worried
Oh,
about if he's not on the court, just to deliver a hard foul to send a message. And that's one thing that I loved about that 2010-11 run when the Pacers played the Bulls in the first round. They got beaten 5 games, but it was that coming out party for Paul George, Roy Hibbert, those guys. But it was Jeff Foster, Feisty Foster, who was delivering hard foul to Derrick Rose multiple times. I think he ended up getting suspended for a game or something like that, if I remember correctly, or got ejected from a game for one of them.
yeah,
So
Jackie, yeah.
it's just one of those things where you need an enforcer out there that says, "Hey, we're not screwing around with this, and we're gonna back our guys." And I feel like every team that the Pacers have played so far, whether it's Portis and Beverly or whether it's Josh Hart and those kind of guys that are playing physical, Indiana misses that physical player out there that can really just get in your face and let you have it. And I want someone to do that. I want Neesmith to kind of be that guy and not be over the top, like, hey, I'm gonna punch you in the face, but like
Yeah,
get in their face and let them know, like, we're not dealing with this crap. It doesn't have to be Nimhard every time, like we saw with Portis.
exactly. But trust me, man, that stuff it changes the momentum. It
It does.
fires up the team. In round one against Milwaukee, when Nemhard was getting in the middle of things, he started playing better. He woke up. I remember Dame was torching him in game one. All of a sudden, Nemhard gets a technical. Dame got shut out in the second half. In game two, Nemhard was getting in the mix of things. Same with when Bobby Portis got tossed out, and whatever. Game four was like the Pacers just they came alive after those type of plays, and they need to hit back right now. No one. We are not talking about injuring anybody. No, but just say that we're not just going to roll over here and just die. We got to hit back, and I think that right now the Pacers could use a little bit of that chippiness. At times we've seen Isaiah Jackson get chippy. We've seen
Yep.
Nemhard, Neesmith a little bit. I think that someone's got to just say, hey, you know what? You might be up 2-0, but you're not going to punk us. All right,
Right.
we got pride, and we're going to go out there and we're going to win game three in front of our crowd. And if things get a little bit chippy, that crowd's going to be rowdy. And that's what we need right now because Knicks fans, they're booing the Pacers out of the arena. They
Yeah.
really are. I mean, they're making fun of Reggie out here. I mean,
Yeah.
come on. This is our guy. We can't just let Reggie get disrespected in the Garden at this point. Come back to Indiana and try that stuff here. All right. Let's see what happens in game three.
I'm a little bit nervous. We're gonna get some a sea of blue and orange in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. If you just look at the ticket prices in comparison to the New York
And a
Knicks,
Friday night. Oh
yeah.
man, people might be
Mother's Day, maybe not
sleeping.
as much. Do New Yorkers care about their mothers?
But New York, they'll push their mother down the stairs if it means the Knicks win. I'm telling you, the New Yorkers, they've been dying for this moment. The Knicks have been kept down for a long time, and I'm telling you, it's just this fan base that they've been starving. I get it. I get it. The Knicks are one of those teams that they have not had. I mean, they haven't made it past the second round in 25 years.
Yeah.
So they might be skipping Mother's Day for Game 4.
Yeah, I will say it is a little bit of a drive or a flight compared to Philadelphia. So
Yeah, it
I
definitely is.
don't think you'll probably see nearly as many in Cambridge as you saw in Philadelphia. But I will not be surprised if we do see quite a few Knicks fans there. I will just say this: Pacer fans, don't get too carried away. New York fans are crazy. I was telling Facci that I got an email today from a Knicks fan who found my email via Twitter. And I don't even really think I can repeat what was said in the message because this is a family friendly show. But it was basically to, it was very, inappropriate. And I'll just put it that way. I didn't respond to the email. I really don't care. Everything that I've been tweeting recently that's been getting a lot of views, I just mute the conversation. I don't waste my energy replying a lot of times to New York people because it's not worth it. And the thing is, I think sometimes people forget, like, I'm not a beat writer. I'm not covering this team professionally for anything besides just doing this podcast. So it is a little bit of a difference than just being someone who's trying to call it fair down both lines. Like, I'm not just a beat writer. Like, I'm a podcaster that has a Substack that doesn't write very much, and I am probably just as big of a fan as most of you guys are. I just try to keep my perspective a little bit cleaner and things like that. I don't get so as upset and riled up like some fans. But I will just say this: like, it's exciting, man. Like, this is what it's all about. This is the playoffs. I'm glad the Knicks are bringing the energy. You know what? Indiana, bring it back. Let's
Mhm.
win games 3 and games 4. Let's make this a series and let's go show New York like, hey, you guys thought you were going to win this in 4 games after game 1? No, we're here to prove that Indiana basketball is alive and they are a problem, and it's not going to be a cakewalk because game 1 and game 2 it was not an easy victory either time for the New York Knicks.
No, it wasn't. But I know they're laughing at us right now. They are, and I know this rivalry will always be a rivalry. But if the Pacers are to just get swept, the Knicks are going to be like, I mean, you're not really like our rival. You were our rival. No, let's show them this is very much a series. Yes, game 1 and 2 they could have gone a completely different direction. But I think that right now the Pacers have a big opportunity. But hey, hopefully that OG is all right. You never want anyone to miss significant time by any means. But if he truly is out for games 3 and 4, the Pacers need to be able to take advantage of it. This is a golden opportunity to
Hey,
potentially, tie this series up. And I think that this is one you do not want to waste because right now, I think the Pacers, if you just said OG was out there, you're going back to Indiana, you'd say, all right, you know what? Hey, it's going to be tough. These are winnable games. They won't come easy, but right now the Pacers have showed enough that they've actually led for the majority of this series. They have. They just have not been able to finish the job when it matters most in the fourth quarter or at least the second half.
absolutely, Facci. Well, that's going to wrap it up for our game 3 preview. A little bit of conversation about all the injuries and things like that. Predictions, you said last night you think the Pacers win game 3. Are you still feeling confident about that?
I am as confident as I have ever been. And
Oh
I know when I've
no.
said that things don't turn out well. I get it. I know. But I'm telling you right now, Indiana is winning game 3. That is happening, and that crowd's going to be wild.
Pacers have not lost a home game since March 18th against the
Whew,
Cleveland Cavaliers.
almost 2 months.
And I will say this, Facci, I'm going to be able to wear my lucky socks as they are clean and in the drawer. They have been washed. They have not been worn at all for this series yet. So I'm pulling them out for game 3 Friday night to only back your prediction. Pacers have to win this game or this series is all but over. And you can go ahead and get those tickets book for Cancun. They can join Patrick Beverly, who is going to be there for a little bit longer since he won't be able to start the season after, at least 4 games into it, which I thought was a little bit of a slap on the wrist considering everything that he did by throwing the ball into the crowd twice. I thought at least 5 games, but it is what it is. Pat Bev will be suspended for the first 4 games of next year. But yeah, I'm right there with you, Facci. We're going to be at the Gold Out. I'll be there. And Pacer Nation, wear your shirts, please. I know that they could be a little tight. So if you're listening to this before you go, wear yellow of some sort just to match and be a part of the group. But Pacers got to get this dub, and the fans got to be electric like they always are. So with that being said, Foch, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at PacersPod, STP. You can find Alex on Twitter at Alex Golden NBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPod, STP. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to youtube.com/setting the pace, a Pacers podcast where you can find all of our video content. Specifically, most of our playoff coverage will be on there as well on our audio platforms, which are on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. That's where you can find this show. It's everywhere. So make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and review. Have really appreciated the comments that we've gotten in the YouTube section as well on Twitter. I know that I do mute some of those because the Knicks fans, but Pacer fans, if you're tweeting at me, I do try to pay attention. So thank you all so much for doing that and being a part of the show as we are excited for game 3 that's happening tonight at 7 o'clock on ESPN. So make sure you get your channel set up. ESPN's where you can find that at. But Facci, if you're hoping that Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton have star games together in game 3, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.